tonight I want to talk about Loki episode 3 and just building off of the theories that we've been going on for the last 2 videos. Okay, immediately we don't really get to see the results of the bombing, but we do get to see the results of them, being Lady Loki and Loki Prime. I'm calling Loki Prime, going through that doorway. Boom, they're into the TVA. So immediately we see that her magic doesn't work here. We knew that was going to be the case. But now I just want to talk about some of the stuff that I've said in regards to Kang maybe training her or something. Now I'm kind of doubling down on that. I'm not sure if it's Kang doing it or if it's like another Kang. So in the comic books, Kang is also this character named Immortus. And Immortus, he's from the future. He eventually gets tired of trying to conquer and just wants to live a peaceful life. So I'm wondering if there isn't some type of character like this that got her, because she talks about how she's been running from the TVA for a long time. So I'm wondering if Immortus didn't get her, kind of train her a little bit, and is kind of setting up this this destruction of the TVA. Or what if it's the opposite? What if Immortus is running the TVA in order to keep everything kind of uniform, and it's a Kang that is trying to blow up the timeline in order to cause chaos? I'm not sure. Regardless, I think that there's something like that going on. I think it's going to be kind of a Kang versus Kang. Ultimately, I think that's what we're going to see. I still think one of those is controlling the TVA. We now found out in this episode that these TVA agents are real people. They are variants from other timelines. So Owen Wilson probably did have a jet ski in another timeline. We found out that the one that was taken hostage by Lady Loki, she talks about, and an interesting choice of words in here, she talks about how it was hundreds of years ago there was a memory. Well, that memory, it doesn't look like it's hundreds of years ago. So I'm thinking that Lady Loki is probably used to living in the future. Which means when she says, I had to go back hundreds of years, is it I had to go back hundreds of years because I've been living 200 years in the future? Or is it I had to go back hundreds of years because she's been working for the TVA for hundreds of years? That I'm not sure of. But regardless, if she was plucked out of maybe the 90s, maybe, what if all of these people were plucked out in the 90s? And so now the only MCU movie that we know of that's taken place in the 90s is Captain Marvel. As far as this canonical Marvel Cinematic Universe that we're talking about. So I'm wondering if there isn't something there too. That'll be interesting to kind of see. We're halfway through the series now. This is episode 3. We've only got 3 more episodes left. But there are a couple of other things that have happened in this in this episode that kind of got me wondering. There's the part where Loki and Lady Loki are in the train and they're talking, and Loki has the time pad and he's keeping it hidden. So he gets up, he's a little drunk, and he's singing this song. This song sounds like it's in Asgardian, and I'm wondering if it wasn't a test from him to see if she grew up on Asgard. Because they end up off the train, and she says, give me the time pad. And he says, okay, and materializes it, and it's broken. She obviously gets angry, and they leave. But I'm wondering if it really was broken. Because, he does a lot of illusion type stuff. So I'm wondering if he didn't do that as an illusion because now he doesn't trust her. Now he's just trying to find out more information. Now there's another theory that I think is less likely, but I think it bears mentioning. And it's not really a theory as much as it's just a thought. When they first land on this planet, Lamentus 1, it's one of the apocalyptic scenarios where a moon is crashing into a planet and no one survives. They run into that building, and she puts her hands on his neck in order to try to enchant him. He says it doesn't work because my mind is too strong. Later on in the episode, she talks about how her power works. She talks about how some it's easy, some she actually has to go into their mind and pluck out a little memory and really kind of do a number. Loki really envisions himself as kind of that hero and being strong. And he's helping her now. He helped her get onto the train. He helped her, in the city. Now, the Ark did explode at the end, so they are conceivably trapped, right? But I'm wondering if this isn't a trick from her. If this is an enchantment and this is just an illusion from him. And she's just letting it play out in order to try to find out more information from him. Maybe he knows. Maybe he's manipulating her inside of her own vision. That I'm not sure. But I wanted to at least mention it because it might be a possibility. Another thing is in the very first episode, when Loki reaches in to the drawer with all the Infinity Stones, he specifically grabs a Time Stone. Now, when they're running through the city at the end of episode 3, a building falls, and he does this move, and the building rights itself back up. I've never seen Loki have this power. So is he using that Time Stone that he captured? And he's just reversing time. Because if you remember Doctor Strange is able to reverse time and put a building back together with his Time Stone. This looks very similar to that. So is Loki using an Infinity Stone? How many Infinity Stones did he end up taking? I think probably just the one, because if he has multiple, then you're going to really start seeing them pop off. But you could, in all this chaos, there is a chance that he's got multiple ones. But he probably would have used them to just leave her. But maybe not. Maybe he does want to find out more information. But in her describing, which is why I think the theory of her like trying to capture him is less likely to be a thing, because we're finding out more exposition through this episode. So in order for that to be true, the other stuff can't be true unless she is manipulating him and is telling him the truth, which is a very that is quite possible. So if Loki does have a time stone, if he did reverse that, then it is possible for them to alter something so that the TVA knows where they are. So if the Ark really did explode and if they really are going to die, then the TVA could find out where they are based on a whole slew of things. But Loki could easily use the Time Stone, reverse the Ark, and then they could get on it. She lost her crown in the train. So maybe that being left behind causes something. I doubt it. But something has to happen for episode 4 to kind of go from there. I think the TVA probably shows up and then they get help. Or they don't. Maybe by use of the Time Stone it triggers, some type of cameo appearance from somebody and we get episode 4, because Tom Hiddleston did say episode 4 and 5 really take us in new directions. There is a cinematic or an animated show coming up called What If, and I think that's going to kind of be based on a lot of the multiverse stuff that we get, right? Because we find out that Lady Loki is an orphan, just like Loki. But Loki had a different upbringing than she did. She, according to the stuff she said, has been on the run for a very long time. So we're not sure what has been going on. In the comic books, her name is Sylvie. And her origin as kind of the Enchantress is that the Asgardians settled near Oklahoma. And Loki ended up giving her powers for whatever reason. And she ends up growing up into kind of the Enchantress. Well, in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, the Asgardians settle in like Norway, so it's possible in some other reality that that's exactly what happened, and she's given powers by that version's Loki, and things unfold differently because she talks about not really knowing her mother, but she was adopted. So what if she was adopted by Loki? And maybe that's why she doesn't like to be called Loki, because maybe Loki did brand her a Loki, and she just doesn't like that, and she's obviously understands that this isn't that Loki, but doesn't really want to work with him because she doesn't trust him. So there's a lot of things that could be the case. Those aren't really theory, they just bear mentioning, just so you're aware of a more complete story. Now, I may be completely wrong on a lot of this stuff, and I hope you let me know in the comments if you think I'm just glaringly wrong, or if I'm way off base with some of this stuff. Because I do think there's a lot to come. I also think that they're not really gonna give us a lot, because WandaVision left a lot of stuff on the table. But it'll be fun to find out. Man, I'm really digging this show. I really liked this episode. I know a lot of people are talking about, this episode was just a filler episode. I disagree. The first two were just really charged, go fast. And there were just a ton of questions, and they needed to be able to kind of pull back a little bit and answer some of those questions. And I think that that's what this episode did. It slowed the pace a bit, answered some of the questions. Again, like I mentioned before, we were going to get a lot more information, but not necessarily answers to our questions. And I think that's what happened. We got a little bit of questions answered, but a whole lot more questions coming up, which I don't think we're going to get all of these questions answered. It's not going to wrap itself up in a bow, because a lot of these might end up answering themselves later on in future Marvel properties, whether it be another series somewhere, whether it be another movie. We'll get an answer to some of the questions that we have later. Marvel really likes to dangle some stuff in front of us and then answer it. And sometimes real small detail, they'll answer something, and we'll have to watch one of these videos that just breaks down everything. So I am certainly not here to break down every little thing, just kind of expanding on some of the questions that you have with some of the knowledge that I have. So I would really love to think what you think is happening, or what you think is going to happen, because this show is amazing. I love it. I'm a huge fan of Tom Hiddleston. I love everything he's been in, and I'm really happy that he's getting the treatment that he's getting, especially considering, next snap in Endgame. So, yeah, let me know, and I will talk to you next time, especially for episode 4 that will come out next Wednesday.